is Robin Norgren. I am an artist and an art teacher. Welcome back to Joseys Art School, episode number 201. And today we're going to draw a breezy palm tree. All right, so before we get started, I want to go over a few things. I love creativity. I think no matter how young or how old you are, creativity is soothing to the heart, soothing to the soul, soothing to the mind. And so, however old you are, I am so glad that you're here. I happen to have an affinity for kids' art because for me, when I start to get too serious about what it is that I'm doing, I lose the whole point of what creativity is supposed to be about. So, when you do projects with me, just know I am all about the process and not the product. And so as I'm drawing, because sometimes we like to have someone draw with us because maybe we don't like drawing alone. I don't really like drawing alone. Just know that as I am creating what the theme is for the video, you can do whatever it is that you'd like that makes it pleasing to you. Okay, so now my examples are on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I'm going to be using an 11 by 14 piece of paper so that it's large enough for you to see it. I have on my table oil pastels and crayons and watercolor paints. You can feel free to use whatever you have on hand. And I would say, even when it comes to paper, I will get a piece of copy paper in a second. I will take a Trader Joe's brown paper bag and work on it. It is whatever I have on hand when I feel like I have the time and I feel like I want to create something. I just do it. I don't let anything stand in my way. So I hope that you coming and joining me today is you telling your own heart, it's time for me to do something that is beautiful. All right, so let's get started. Now, I'm going to show you a couple tips about what I do when I'm drawing. You do not have to do these things. But what I like to do is I like to make a dashed line down the middle of my page, going both ways. And I am working in portrait mode, but you can feel free to work in landscape mode if you'd like. And what I'm going to do is I'm mostly going to be drawing with a Sharpie so that it is dark enough for you to see it on your screen, but you feel free to use whatever you like to draw. Sometimes to get out of your own way with drawing, it actually is good to work with a marker or a Sharpie because then you can let the happy mistakes happen, happy accidents, and you can create based on what you see on the page. All right, so let's get started. Let's start with the palm tree. So we're going to have this palm tree looking like it's kind of bending in the wind, okay? So I'm going to start down here, and then I'm just going to come up maybe about halfway into the middle of that top quadrant there, okay? And then I'm going to come down and do the same, but I'm going to come over a little bit to the right and follow that line. And you can have it bend however you want. Okay. And then I'm going to add, I guess, what would emulate like some coconuts in my tree. Okay. And then I'm going to start to add the branches. Now, to make it easier, I'm going to make these lines going in different directions, kind of to guide where I want those leaves to go. I'm going to pull you just a little bit closer so you can see. All right, so from there, I'm going to now build on that leaf. So I've got that vein in the middle, and then I'm going to start to come around. It's almost like a frown, and then come around the other way. And as you can see, it's overlapping a little bit here, but you can just go ahead and erase it out, whatever you don't want. So you can have it, the coconut in the front, or you can have it in the back. Now I'm going to come out a little further on this vein and then come around. Right? Now, as you're doing your own, just feel free to just let those lines float along the page, right? Because the more movement you have in that line, the more it really does look like it's a tree that's bending in the wind. Now, what I like to do, and this is what I would tell you if you were in my class in person, is the way you look at your paper to see if you like it is not to leave it on your table, but to bring it up in front of your eyes as if it were on a wall and see if you like how it looks. And even ask yourself, what else do you need? As I'm looking at mine, I'm noticing there's this big spot right here that has nothing. So I'm going to go ahead and add one more leaf there. Okay. All right, so from there, now we're going to add a little more, I guess, texture, what we would call texture, to our drawing so that it has a little more of an authentic look. So I'm doing some zigzag lines. You can also kind of do wispy lines going back and forth. It's like the shape of a V. So you can do all of the same kind of pattern, or you can add different patterns, because again, this is for your enjoyment. I mean, you could also give it as a gift to someone. I really love when someone creates something for me. As you can see, each one takes on a life of its own if you can just be gentle with yourself. See, my hand started to go in a different direction and I decided, I'll let it go where it wants to go. Now, I also invite you, if you want to just start picking up your crayons or your oil pastels or markers and start to fill it in right now, feel free to do that. All right, so I've added in those details to my leaves. I'm going to add a little more detail to the coconuts. And then I'm going to just add this texture into the bark of the tree. Now, if you're ready and you've made those dotted lines on your page, you can erase them or you can leave them there because we're also going to add a beach horizon line, and we're actually even going to add a surfboard. Yes? All right, so right here is where you get to decide, based on the bend of your palm tree, where you're going to place the surfboard. So the surfboard kind of has like a shape of almost a banana, right? So there's my shape right there. Okay. You could put two surfboards there if you want. That's up to you. And then from here, I'm going to also add, I guess what I'm going to call it a horizon line. But what I know in my mind is it's got a sand feel. So I know that I'm going to make this sand color for it just sitting in the sand, my surfboard. Now, maybe you want it looking like it's in the water. So then you decide that's what your horizon line is going to suggest, okay? And then so from here, we've got our tree and we've got our surfboard. And if you want to make some waves, you can go ahead and start to make the waves. And you can do it like just a bouncing line here. You could even add a little more sand area here if you want to. So again, you're using a pencil. I'm using a Sharpie just because I want you to be able to see it on the screen. But you can really feel free to just add your details as you see fit, right? And then from here, you could decide even to add another palm tree there if you wanted to. Or you could even decide to add a little sailboat. Okay. You could add a design to your surfboard. All right. You could even add some flip-flops over here in the corner. So just two little ovals, and then those two little lines, like a V where the toes go. Super cute. All right, so here's what mine looks like. Now, remember, pick your paper up, put it in front of you. Just take a gentle breath. Do you need to add more? Or is it time to add color? I'm going to go ahead and start adding color. Now, I love to do a mixture of all different types of colors and from the oil pastel, from the watercolor paint, from the crayons, and of course, if you have markers, if you have colored pencils, if you have acrylic paints, feel free to use what your heart is singing for today, right? And the more color, the better, I always say. It's funny because by trade, I am an art teacher in person, and I do a lot of art in the Montessori preschool that I'm at. And it is always so amazing to me. Sometimes the things like this, something so simple as a palm tree, and kids love it. But I'm a real fan of happy art. So for me, I love it just as much as they do. And actually today at school, we drew a dump truck. And I tell you what, it seems like the simplest of things, but I loved drawing that dump truck because it just reminds you, these are the simple things in life, right? And those shapes coming together, you know, it's funny because on the surface, and I think we adults do this as well, where it's like we just feel like, oh, that's going to be difficult to draw. And then you suddenly realize, no, actually, it's just a bunch of shapes. It's not really that hard to draw it. Oh, it must be my garbage picking up today. And then you start and you go, oh my gosh, I did that. And there's something about the simplicity that takes all the complexity out of life, right? All right, so there is my palm tree. I'm going to start using my watercolor paint to add some color into the water. Okay, and I'm going to do a combination of green and blue. I don't even remember the last time I have been to the beach. Something we used to try to do when we'd go to San Diego at least a couple times a year, but not so much lately. Of course, the thing I love about watercolor is it's very forgiving, right? I really actually like to use my watercolor and then to add in, maybe not the Sharpie, add in the oil pastel because I feel like it brings in even more texture. Makes the wave have a bit more movement, right? This is something that I think that you could also do on a canvas, and it'd be a nice painting with acrylic paints. You could set it in your beachy themed bathroom or maybe even at your vacation home. I actually am a collector of art, and the reason why I love to collect art is it is kind of like a snapshot in time, almost like a photograph for when I buy something or if it's someone that I've met. I actually had the privilege last year to be in Detroit, Michigan, and I was on, it was actually an installation in downtown Detroit, and it's was created by Tyree Guyton, and I actually went there with a couple of cousins. We were just killing some time before we had to go to the airport, and all of a sudden this man got out of the car, and my cousins are not really into art. I'm kind of like the weird one in the family, and he got out of the car, and I looked at him and I said, "You guys, this is the artist that created this installation." And it was the wildest thing ever to actually see him in the flesh. And yeah, he was very personable, and he was just really very encouraging. At the time, I was an art teacher in a K through 6th grade classroom, and he sent a little special message to my students, and it was just a really beautiful moment. It's like, just an ordinary person just putting out his art in the world, and was very mindful of that there's this future group of artists coming up, and that he wanted to make sure that he had something to say to them personally, and it was just like the coolest thing ever. All right, so as you can see, now I'm really playing with the color and just adding details, and yeah, just enjoying our time together as I finish painting this. And it's one of those things where once you finally settle in to creating, it's like you could spend hours doing it, right? I know that's how I feel. So I like to, even as I'm creating sometimes, I'll start to be inspired about adding some new things to the background. So if you want to do something like simple, like even adding a sun in the sky, or adding more texture, which is so funny. We always tell kids not to scribble, but it leaves such a fantastic texture in the paper that I'm not mad about how it looks, for sure. And I like to challenge myself sometimes by picking colors just randomly without going to my go-to colors. Are you like that too? Where you always pick the same colors for your drawings or your paintings, and you're like, just always looks the same, because I always do the same thing. But I really like how this is coming out, and I hope that you're enjoying yours as well. Now, another thing that I like to do is I like to let my drawings, what we call, breathe. So I'll put this away, or I'll even sometimes hang it on a wall and let it sit for a day. I guess I would call it marinating. And then I'll come back to it later, and sometimes I'm inspired to add a bit more. And the opposite is true as well. Sometimes I'm like not happy with how it came together, and so I'll leave it be, and the next day it's like, what was I so frustrated about? And again, it's that thing about being too close sometimes to what you're doing, and maybe looking for something in your mind that maybe it's not coming out, but it doesn't mean what you've created is bad, right? And so again, as you're working through your paintings, just feel free to pick them up from time to time, and just invite your eye to tell you what else you could be putting in your painting. I want to make sure you see it up close. So here is my finished painting. Feel free to send me a copy of what you created over at my email, wellofcreations@gmail.com. I am so glad you came by. If you're still wanting to do a little bit more, I have over 200 art lessons on my YouTube channel, so make sure and go back and check it out. Subscribe, please, because I do 2 videos a week, and I'd love to have you in the classroom with me again. Goodbye.